This is Terry at Sirius, and in this application note, we're going to talk about colors. Okay, so throughout the other application notes you've probably watched so far, you've seen one of the most common things we've done is change the background color of a page. So we've got a simple project here with just a display and one page, and we're going to go in, and you can see the background color of this is set to this code here. So let's go in and press dot dot dot, and you can kind of see there's different tabs here in the color picker. So obviously we can just pick a standard color and say OK, and we see the color. Now, what do these codes mean? So if you've used some graphic editing programs like Photoshop and Microsoft Paint and a variety of things, you'll know that these are hex codes for colors. So and there are 4 pairs in here, 4 bytes. The first byte is the opacity of the color. So we'll talk about opacity in a minute, but for now, just know that FF means fully opaque. No transparency at all. So this is fully opaque. And then we see RGB. So this is our ARGB, the alpha channel, red, green, and blue. And each is a concentration of each color. So this is alpha, FF, meaning fully opaque. There's no red component, a moderate amount of green, and a full amount of blue. So we can actually, just pick from the color chooser here, that kind of thing, and navigate around. It'll show us the different colors, and you can see it live preview in the window here. It also keeps track of your recent colors here, so you can go in and choose your recent colors. Or we can go into, and there are different color spaces that you can talk about, but we're always going to be mapping to eventually RGB, because that's how LCD glass works. Red, green, and blue pixels that are mixed together. And in fact, if you get out a microscope or a really good magnifying glass and look at the front of an LCD screen, you'll actually see the separate red, green, and blue pixels all really tight beside each other, the little LEDs. And as the colors change, you'll see each of the LEDs light up in different intensities to create, as you step away from the screen a little bit more, the net color that your eye perceives. If we go to the RGB tab here, you can actually go in and actually hand code the RGB. So if I want to do a little bit of red from 0 to 255, let's give it a 25 out of 255, and a little bit of blue, a green, maybe 80, and we can just mix this in, and we can actually change the alpha channel if we want as well. But this is telling us the color code that's net. So if you need to have a specific RGB, you can. Or if you have a CMYK color, many of your corporate logos or corporate color systems will be specified in CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And those are printing colors, and they'll be remapped over to RGB colors. But if you have a corporate logo, you might want to enter it here, and it'll translate automatically and store it in RGB. So whenever you have a color, like the background color or fill color or inner color, you can always use RGB, these ARGB codes. And we use the word ARGB 8888, meaning 8 bits, alpha, red, green, and blue. The SHIP engine and SHIPTide always work in full ARGB 8888 colors. Even though your LCD display that is on your specific module, let's say the SIM225, has a 16-bit display. And so the amount of color resolution that actually ends up on the display will be, in that case, 565 RGB, 5 bits of R, 6 bits of green, and 5 bits of blue. And obviously a display has no concept of transparency on the actual physical display, so that by the time something gets to the display, it has to be a fully opaque image. So we can do all kinds of things with colors, but we've got a page here, and we're going to add a box on top of the page. Let's add a new box. And as usual, the box inherits the whole size of the page. I'm going to just hard code this to be 200 pixels by 200 pixels. And then I'm going to put it in the middle of the screen, middle of this page, so that we can overlay it. Now, let's talk about opacity. This box is 100% transparent. In other words, 0 opacity. So there is an opacity property up here for the object, and it says no value set. And there's also all the different colors, like background color, which also has no value set. So this box is completely transparent. Now I can set, let's go into this background color, and I'm going to go to the RGB tab, and I'm going to give this a color. Let's leave it at that, some kind of a red color or whatever. And you see it's red, and it's fully opaque. You don't see any of the green coming through at all. But I can take the alpha channel down, and let's take it down to some low number. And it looks like the red is getting a little darker. What's actually happening is you're seeing the green come through. So if I take this up to this light red, you'll see it's the same color, but it's partly transparent. So it's being alpha blended, is what they call it. Alpha blending is the concept of taking a transparent object or some level of transparency and blending it into what's behind it. So I've got a semi-transparent object here. Now what I've done is I've created the background color as this semi-transparent red object. Now if I take another box and add it inside, and of course it's transparent and takes up the whole size, I'm going to make this box half the size of the parent. So parent.inner width over 2, and the outer height is parent.inner height over 2. Now I'm using layout rules here. If you haven't watched the layout rules application note AN0311, that's application note 310, you should probably go back and do that. That helps you understand what I just did. And I'm going to vertically and horizontally center it in its parent. So we've got a little box inside the other. Okay, now it's fully transparent. I'm going to make this one, the background color, purple. Now the purple is fully opaque. The red, so it's going to overlay this partially transparent red box that's where this green is coming through. And if I go back to my page and I change that background color to white, you'll see how the red is a little bit transparent, but the purple is not. If I change to black, you'll see that the red is showing up very faintly here because of the transparency through to the black, and the purple is over top of that. Now, the same thing applies. So we haven't changed the opacity of the node. All we've done is talked about colors in the objects. Now, there's a big difference between what I just did and changing the opacity of the node. If we go back to that middle box and we'll just change the opacity to FF, fully opaque. Okay, and now the red comes up fully opaque. So now I've got opaque black as the background, opaque red, and then opaque purple. And I take this middle box and I change its opacity to 50. Now, this is very different. So let me go back and do this again. I'm going to take the opacity out. I'm going to change the background color to 50. Sorry, the background color opacity to 50. You see it's kind of a semi-transparent red, but the purple is fully opaque. Let me put this back to FF, fully opaque. Oops, I need one more F in there. FF, fully opaque. Now let me change the opacity of the node to 50. You get the same red, but notice the purple changed. Why? The reason the purple changed is the node now and all of its children are affected by that node's opacity. So I've just taken the node and its whole subtree and reduced its, increased its transparency, reduced its opacity down to 50 out of 255. So that's what, about a fifth of opaque. And so if I can bring that up to 60, you'll see it just gets a little tight, a small bit stronger. If I add, for instance, a piece of text inside this box, let's just put a little piece of text, hello, and I make that text color, let's make it white, fully opaque. It is not going to be shown as fully opaque. Do you see how it's got kind of faint? Because this whole box is inheriting the opacity of this parent. If I get rid of this opacity, it goes back to the default, and you see hello fully on. So you can actually, and opacity is fully adjustable at runtime in sales scripts. So you can have certain things that are where the whole tree, regardless of what's displayed inside, the opacity is reduced and it becomes semi-transparent, and then you can bring it back up if you want. That's an interesting way of doing unselected types of things or overlays or all that. You can create complex objects and then just set the root of that object to be the opacity property, and it will automatically change and become the whole object will become, including all its children, will inherit that opacity. When you have opacity at the top level, let's say this box, the big red box, will change its opacity to 150, so just a little bit transparent, and they all inherit it. I can go down to this box and go and say 128, let's say, and these opacities are multiplied. So if this one sets the opacity of its object, it gets inherited by this object, and by the time you get down, if you kept doing that, you'd have something very, very transparent down at the very bottom. So opacities cascade and are multiplied as they go down. So that's the opacity at the node level versus specifying the alpha channel at a color level. So let's get rid of the opacity here. And you can see what happens if I throw another box. Let's just add another box right here. And in this case, I'm going to put, this is a sibling. It's taking up the whole screen. I'm going to take our little Sirius logo and drag it onto this box. And there we go, get our Sirius logo up here. And I'm going to center that logo. Center. And I'm going to center it here. And that logo is fully opaque. And it's sitting over top of all these other objects. But I can go into the node level opacity and change this to half of 255 is roughly 128. And you see how it faintly sits over top of the other box. And that is a node level opacity that is affecting the opacity of everything inside it, in this case, the image. So colors, again, colors are selected. You can use the ... You can use them in scripts. For instance, if we wanted to have a global variable, let's add a global variable up here, and this variable, let's put it up at the top. Let's give it a name called alarm, and we can say this is a Boolean, and let's say this is maybe instead of overheating. And the idea here is we'd have a global Boolean that would go true whenever something was overheating in your system. Now, let's say that we wanted this hello box. Let's go here, and we want this box to appear only when it's overheating, but we just want it to be very faint when it's not overheating, for whatever reason. What I would do is add a listener inside this box. Let's see, add new listener, and we'll listen to overheating. And when overheating changes, we're going to run this script. And this script, what are we going to do in this script? Now we want to change the opacity of the box right here, which is my nearest box above me. So I'm going to say box.opacity equals overheating, question mark, standard C, Java syntax. And I can make it, if it is overheating, I want it fully visible, 255. If it's not overheating, I just want it to be really, really faint. So let's say 20, and it'll just be sitting there. So, and if you've watched any of the app notes around listeners and events, you'll understand what I just did. Basically, what I've done is when overheating changes, if anybody changes this Boolean variable, the listener here will wake up. It'll run this script. This script will now set the opacity of that box automatically fully opaque or mostly transparent, depending on that value of the overheating variable. So there's a way to wire opacity. You can even change the color. Let's go into that script and say when it's, let's say the box.bg color. And we also want to change it based on overheating. And in this case, we want to make it green when it's not overheating and red when we are. So if it's overheating, we want red. Let's go completely opaque. Now that's the color opaque. That's affected by the box's opacity. The color opaque, red. So then we go red, green, blue, and we're going to go opaque, red, green, blue. So we've made it the color fully opaque, but the opacity of the box is being changed. Now the advantage of doing it that way is that if there are any children, like text and things inside the box, they will also be partly transparent in this case. If instead all we want is the box's background color to be partly transparent, but if there's text and all that kind of thing inside it, anything inside it, we want it always to be fully opaque, let's get rid of the opacity at the node level, and let's say that our red is fully opaque, but our green background color is partly transparent. So what we've done now is made this script only change the background color of the box to be partly transparent green versus fully opaque red. And what you might do is create some constants up at the global level. So let's just add a constant. We'll drag it up to the top of the whole GUI right up here. And I'm going to name this constant alarm red. And it's going to be data type color. And now I'm going to pick the alarm red. So I'm going to pick, I'm going to say this is 0 and fully opaque, red, green, blue. Oop, don't need a semicolon there. That's going to cause a problem. Red, green, blue. Okay, so now I've got alarm red, and I'm going to copy that and put it up here as right underneath like that. And I'm going to change this to be alarm green. And in this case, I'm going to make it that partially transparent red, green, blue. Oop, I didn't get that right. There we are. Okay, so now I've got color constants, and instead of hard coding things, I can use alarm red and alarm green here. And now, of course, these are constants at build time, and I can change them at build time. They're not variables, so I can't change them at runtime. These will get compiled in as constants into the script. But I can then go back to my box, and instead of saying whatever this color is on this box, I'm going to set it to alarm green as the starting place. And you'll see that there's this, and let's get rid of this box above it. Let's make it fully black. And you'll see, that way you'll be able to see, or white, sorry, you'll be able to see it's just that faint green that's sitting over top of there. Or if we want to make the default that alarm red, you'll see that there's the fully opaque red. So that's a quick overview of colors in SHIPTide, how to use constants like alarm red or alarm green or background red or background green or whatever it is that, or my main corporate color gray as a series of constants that you can use throughout your GUI, and then you can adjust them as you see fit. And the colors are composed of an alpha channel, which is the transparency or the opacity. FF or 255 is fully opaque, and 00 is fully transparent. And then the colors are red, green, blue, 8 bits per color. So the color is ARGB, alpha, red, green, and blue. And you can overlay color, you can use colors with their transparency channel, or in the hierarchy of the layout, you can use the opacity node to adjust the transparency or opacity of all the children below that spot, which can be adjusted at runtime, as can all the colors in the GUI.